Hello, Chicago Bears fans. Welcome to the Bears Den podcast. I'm Andy, and I'm joined by the bad guy, Chicago Clarence. Thank you.
Let's go.
And hopefully our prayers have been answered. I think we had a great draft. What do you think, Chicago Clarence?
Let me tell you something. If you are a Bears fan, there is no way that you are not excited about what the Bears did this past week, getting our franchise quarterback and then getting that wide receiver at number 9. And he was on everybody's wish list. And he fell to us because of what the Atlanta Falcons did. And I'm
Yes.
sure we're going to talk about that in a minute.
Yes, I hope you guys watched our videos from us at the bowling alley when we went crazy when we realized that Atlanta. I can't explain why you would sign Kirk Cousins and then draft Penix. Whatever. I'm glad they did it though. I guess the gods were looking down on us on that one because I love the move that Atlanta made because that gave us a Dunze. What do you think of that move, Clarence?
Well, let me tell you, when I saw Neighbors come off the board, and then when I saw Joe Alt come off the board, I started to get a little worried. And so,
Yeah.
we started talking about, okay, are we going to trade down to try to garner more picks because we only had 4 picks? But then when I saw Atlanta come on the board, and I thought that maybe they were going to take Dumerville, um, and then that would drop a Doomsday to us, and they totally went to the left and got Penix, who, as I told you before in previous shows, I love Michael Penix. Had we traded back and got more picks
Yeah.
and took Michael Penix at quarterback, I would not have had a problem with that at all. I think he is the most accurate passer in the draft. Not the most athletic, and he has some injury concerns, but for the most part, that guy knows how to sling the pill. So had we gotten him and got more picks and maybe drafted Harrison, I would have totally been on board with that.
I like Penix as well. This is not a knock on Penix. I like Penix, but I don't understand why you would sign Cousins to that kind of contract and then draft a potential franchise quarterback when you have Cousins. You're going to pay him no matter what because he's guaranteed. You're paying him no matter what happens. It really doesn't make a lot of sense. But I think the key to this draft and the key to our season is Caleb Williams. If he turns out to be a franchise quarterback, we are set up for years and years and years. I mean, this offense is stacked. I mean, the only weakness I see on this offense is still the offensive line. I'm still not thrilled with the offensive line, in spite of drafting Kieran from Yale, who could potentially unseat Braxton Jones. What are your thoughts on that one, Clarence?
I think that we got him as an assurance pick. He can play
Yes.
basically the right tackle, which we're set there, and he could play left tackle. He's assurance at left guard because as we all know, Jenkins gets hurt every year. And so if Braxton Jones, I think that Braxton Jones has been put on notice that once
Yes.
training camp starts, it's probably going to be a battle for that spot. And Braxton Jones may very well find himself on the bench being the backup instead of the new guy. So my only issue with that is, as I look at the offensive line across the board, I think that with free agency and with what we just did in the draft, you have to say we're better
Oh,
right
yes.
now than where we were this time last year.
I agree
And
with that 100%.
we had a lot of holes on this team. We was not going to be able to fix this team in 2 drafts. I mean, that's
Yeah.
how bad we were across the board. I think that we went in, we addressed the offensive side of the ball, which is what we need to do in today's modern NFL. Us being the only franchise that doesn't have a 4,000-yard passer, we'll talk about that as the season goes on.
Yeah.
But we have to start acting like a big boy franchise. And with the steps that's been made last year and this year, we got to be on our way. And like we had said before, we better be right about Caleb Williams. If
Yes.
we're wrong, like we have been for the last 5 decades, it's just going to be more of the same.
I I pray to the football gods that we finally have a franchise quarterback on our team, on our roster. I mean,
He certainly looks the part. He said, but so
yes,
did Justin Fields.
yes.
So
I mean, sooner or later, we got to get this right. We've been trying for 100 years to get this quarterback position right. Sooner or later, it's got to happen. I mean,
a
the
lot of
keys,
it, though,
yeah,
I mean, I'm sorry for cutting you off, but
go
my
ahead.
thing, a lot of it still rests on coaching
Yes,
because you're not going to convince me that every quarterback that we had just was just that bad. A lot of it rests on Did you put the right people around him? Did you have the right coaches in the quarterback room? And for the most part, we did not. So you have Fields, like for example, Fields had 3 years. With 3 of those years, he had two different offensive coordinators.
Yes.
He had two different head coaches his time in Chicago. So you have to start questioning: did we set him up for success? And a lot of the times, I would just have to say no, we did not. For the most part, we tried to stick a square peg in a round hole dealing with him. And Pittsburgh, I believe, is going to get it right. And we're going to probably rue today that we did not keep him. But he's in Pittsburgh right now. We're focusing on what the Bears have going forward, and we have better be right on offense. Shane Waldron seems like he knows what he's doing. His resume says that he knows what he's doing. He's got a lot of weapons to work with. I'm interested to see what kind of offensive packages we're going to set up. We got Swift in that running back, a guy who can block, he can run, and he can pass catch. The only time we have got a running back who can do all three.
I
So
mean, I'm curious to see too what they do with this offense. What Shane Waldron does. I don't know that much about him. I don't follow the Seahawks, obviously. That's a West Coast team. We don't see them much on the East Coast. But I mean, he has high grades. Like, he is well liked, well respected. I think the key is offensive coordinator and the quarterback. Right. We should contend for a playoff spot at the very least. We should contend. Don't you agree or disagree with that?
a lot of the national pundits say the same.
Yeah.
Looking at the team, and hey, we got a weak schedule
Yes.
because
Yeah.
of our
We
record from
got
last year.
last
If
place
we can't
schedule.
if we can't take advantage of this schedule, then the book's out on this team. You're gonna have to start all over from the coaching staff. You should win. You can't have two stud wide receivers. You got one proven stud at tight end. The book's
Yeah.
still out on Cole Komet. I mean, I think he's a very serviceable tight end, but Gerald Everett can play. And so
Yes.
you get him and you stick him with surefire Hall of Famer and Keenan Allen. DJ Moore is on his side on his way, and he's 25 years old. He's going to be 26 this year, but we know he can play. Everything rests on what Caleb Williams does.
Yeah, I agree. He's going to be the straw that stirs the drink this year. If he is just great, good to great, and just I think we should have a good year. We got the last place schedule. I think we should have the good year. In other
And then you
news,
put that with the top 10 defense
yes, yes,
and giving us good field position because you cut the punter we had and you
yes,
went out and you signed a stud, in the
yeah,
draft. You
yes,
drafted a stud. So Ryan Poles seems to know what he's doing. And the proof will be in the pudding. We can sit back and see exactly how all of this stuff unfolds. But I think that we're on our way to at least being a playoff team. And he came from Kansas City, man. He was there when Kansas City was bad. And they built
yes.
that thing up into a juggernaut. He was in the
Hmm.
room when discussions was made about drafting Patrick Mahomes. So the guy has the pedigree. He's brought that over to Chicago. He tore that team down to the studs, and now he's building it back up the right
I
way.
I think Ryan Poles has done a fantastic job. I mean, we still have cap room. We still have all of our draft picks for next year. I mean, we have our core group is 25 or under. We have a very young team. I mean, depth wise, I still think the offensive line and defensive line are hurting for depth. I
Yeah,
still think we need a starter across from Sweat, but I
yeah,
still think this team should contend. And then we did sign Booker or did draft Booker 5th round. We gave up a draft pick there, but it was a
yeah.
late round pick. We can
Hmm.
those are much easier to recoup than the early round picks. So, Clarence, what are your thoughts on the defense? The defensive line, especially. There are reports out there that we're going to sign in Dockway. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that when you look at what our defense did last year, we were middle of the road. We had all of this issues going on with our coordinator and him leaving, and then Eberflus having to take over, calling the defensive plays and
Yeah.
whatnot, and then we make the trade to get Sweat, which we spent the second round pick on him, and so far he's been well worth it. We signed him to a long term extension, so we got him. Um, if we get Ngakwe, my only problem with Ngakwe is Ngakwe does not stop the run. He's a pass rusher and a pass rusher only, and we have improved with stopping the run. We have got
Yes.
great linebackers with Edwards and Edmonds in there, and we know Jack Sanborn is a very serviceable
Yeah.
linebacker. So I like our front four, but our back seven is the strength of our defense. And
Yeah.
if we can just get another guy in there, I would say our biggest need is defensive tackle. We need a three
Yes.
technique. We need a three technique in there like nobody's business. If we get one in there that can stop the run and put pressure on the quarterback like we are used to having when we had Tommy Harris and the guys that came after him, then our defense goes to a different level. And we don't necessarily have to have another bookend. We can just put somebody over there
Hmm.
and everything can just go off Sweat. But until that happens, I think that we're probably going to hover around 10 to 15 range in overall defense, but having a great offense that stays on the field and able to get first downs and move the chains will help our defense.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I would probably go after a three technique before I would try to sign another defensive end. I mean, hopefully Dexter continues to improve and he gets a lot better. So he got a lot better as the year went on. Pickens, I'm hoping, shows up more this year because a lot of rookies, it takes 1 year to find your feet.
Dominic
NFL,
Robinson just doesn't seem he's
yeah,
getting it. He
no,
is coming along real slow, and
yeah,
they had high hopes for him, and so far he's not producing.
yeah. He's 2 years in. I think he is what he is at this point as well. I would expect him to almost get cut if we would sign Unique and Doc Wade. You'd have to free up a roster spot. I would be worried if I was him, honestly. So Clarence, let's talk about the wide receivers. We were talking about this earlier today.
Yeah.
Who in your opinion is the greatest wide receiver that the Chicago Bears have ever drafted? That's the key word, ever drafted. And I had to look it up, and our wide receiver room is not that great in Chicago that we drafted. Honestly, it's not that much better in the quarterback position.
Well,
Who do you think?
when you look at the guy who holds the Bears record for receiving yards,
Yeah,
it's Johnny Morris with
yeah,
5,059 yards. You know, and you got guys that's almost listen. That's how
uh,
bad that's
yeah.
how bad our offense has been over the years. But I don't even think that he's the best. The best guy that I would say that's been the best for us at receiving yards is the great Walter Payton. And I'm gonna tell
Oh,
you why. Johnny Morris holds the record, but Johnny Morris wasn't a wide receiver, he was a halfback. And
mm-hmm,
he played his entire 10-year career with the Bears, where Walter Payton was our running back.
mm-hmm.
And I just think for Payton, with the ball in his hand, catching the ball out of the backfield, being as dangerous as he was with the ball in his hand, to me, he was the best guy ever that we ever had a receiver to play. And he only had 521 less yards than Johnny Morris did. So to me, it's Walter Payton.
I can't disagree with you on that. I
See,
would
I
still
told
have
you it was going to shock you.
yeah,
I told you my answer was going to surprise you.
I would still have to say, I mean, our quarter numbers, our best one is Johnny Morris, and that is not saying much at all. Like Clarence said, 5,059 total receiving yards. That's nothing to brag about. Like
That's ridiculous.
I was actually stunned when I started looking this up today and saw that we're not that great at wide receivers. So I'm hoping that Dunze, who I'm really high on, I know you were higher on Harrison. That's fine. I didn't want to give up a farm to get him. I would
Yeah,
like to have him on the team. I would love to have him on the team. I
yeah.
wasn't going to give up a farm to get him. I'd rather have our draft picks be able to build for the future because we saw what we did with somebody else. I'm not going to name his name. A table almost got turned over. And then we had a decent team and we couldn't draft anybody because we didn't have any draft picks. We got up a farm to get them. But I'm hoping Odunze is a great wide receiver, and he plays his entire career for the Bears. I think he will set a lot of records if he just plays his entire career for the Bears, and he would have to. He just averages 800 yards over 10 years. That would make him the greatest wide receiver ever
That
for
was
Doomsday.
that was smash it. But you got to
Yes.
look at you got to look at when teams draft quarterbacks.
Yeah.
It's kind of unprecedented for a team to draft a quarterback and a wide receiver in that very same draft. So it's almost unprecedented what we did last week in the draft. So you figure you bring a Doomsday in, and then you bring Caleb Williams in the same year. So 9 times out of 10, you don't lose your quarterback. And as
Yeah.
long as you keep your quarterback and the way that he manages our salary cap, it's conceivable to say that they played with each other for a decade. If that happens,
so.
then you very well could have drafted your future all-time receiving yards for a wide receiver. Very
Yeah.
well. And don't forget, we got DJ Moore there.
Oh yeah, I have not forgot about.
He's only
DJ.
25 years old.
Yeah,
I
thank
mean,
you.
he's
Thank you,
got
Carolina
he's got
Panthers.
another 6-7 years to play.
Thank you, Carolina Panthers, for your great trade that you made with us.
Legendary trade.
I love riling up Panthers fans because obviously we live here in Charlotte. We get a lot of them. We love riling them up and reminding them of that trade. But I'm hoping Caleb Williams and Odunze are best friends, and they're best friends for a long time, and they set a whole bunch of records for us, and they hoist trophies, and then they fill up our trophy case. So, Clarence, let me ask you this. If Caleb Williams is a franchise quarterback, he turns out to be a franchise quarterback, are we going to win Super Bowls with this team? Finally.
Absolutely. There's
Yeah.
no reason why we should believe any different. The only thing that I would give pause and they will have to show me is, can they beat the Green Bay Packers? And if you want to
Yeah.
win the Super Bowl, if you want to get to the Super Bowl, you have got to win your division. And what's standing in our way every year? The Green Bay Packers. And then you look over there, the Detroit Lions got their stuff together. They draft them well. They are excellently coached. They got a lot of weapons on offense, and their defense is better than ours. They're not going anywhere. So before we can start thinking about Super Bowl, we got to start thinking about the
Right.
conference first. I mean, the second, but our division first. And to win that division, you would have earned it. Trying to get through Green Bay
Yeah.
and Detroit.
NFC North, is it the best division in the NFC?
Oh, definitely.
I
Definitely.
think so too.
It's the
I mean,
deepest. I mean, you can
yeah.
have 2 playoff teams come out of that division, maybe 3, depending
Yeah.
on how everything shakes out.
Yes. I think it's going to be a fist fight with Detroit and Green Bay for number 1 in the NFC North this year.
Yeah,
I really do.
yeah.
I think it's going to be ugly, which is a good thing, but this is a really deep division. I mean, Caleb Williams, if you had to rank him as a quarterback, where do you rank him in the NFC? 4th best? At 3rd best. I would put him in front of McCarthy.
Third, I would say 3rd best. I mean, but Jordan Love just got there.
Yeah.
He had a good season last year, but he's got the best coach in the division.
Yeah.
I mean, Matt LaFleur knows what he's doing.
So you consider Jordan Love the best quarterback in our division? I would consider him the best.
I would have to give it to him just by default,
Yeah.
to be honest with you, because Goff, he's already played in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I had to say, who do I want to start my team on the 10-yard line with 1 timeout and a minute and a half to get in the field goal range, and I had to pick between Jordan Love and Goff? I'm taking Jordan Love.
I would take Love too. Unfortunately, we've seen Goff throw so many interceptions against us in the one game,
especially against us. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't trust him, but he did play in the Super Bowl already.
He did play in the Super Bowl, but that was with a very different team. And even though Matt LaFleur seems to know what he was doing, that guy he had out there in L.A. really knows how to coach offense.
Yeah. So let me ask you about Minnesota. You like what they did with McCarthy there?
I think Minnesota. I think Minnesota took what was left, their best option that was left, and McCarthy. I don't think he's ready to be a starter yet. I could be wrong, but I tend to not be. I tend to be right.
Yeah.
I think that it would behoove them to get somebody to put McCarthy behind for a year and sit him and let him get used to holding the clipboard and looking at defenses and breaking down game tape before they throw him in there. Now, the good thing about Minnesota is they got one of the best wide receivers in the league. And I think their tight end is up and coming as well. They got a good offensive line. They got a good running back there in Minnesota. So there's offensive weapons there too. I just don't think McCarthy is ready to jump in there and be a starter from day one. I could
I
be
don't.
wrong, but I doubt it.
He says that a lot, ladies and gentlemen. I like everything about Minnesota except the quarterback position. I mean, we all know Jordan Jefferson is all world. TJ Hawkinson's really good. I can't remember the other quarter. Jordan Addison, he's pretty good.
And didn't Aaron Jones go there?
Yes, and Aaron Jones, like we say all the time, if you want to start a fantasy running back against the Bears, you start Aaron Jones.
Yep, no matter what colors he's wearing
Yes.
and what team he's playing for, you start him against the Bears. He will show out because we don't like tackling him for whatever reason, unbeknownst to me.
No, we do not. So anything else you want to talk about before we sign off here?
Well,
let me do my intro. So here we go into our final segment of the show. What is Chicago Clarence pissed off about this week? What has his blood pressure raised so much that he could wind up in the hospital? So take us home, Clarence.
Well, this week is going to be a little different than the previous 2 weeks. And it's not something that I'm necessarily pissed off about, but just something I'm going to shed a little bit of light on, and you guys probably going to like this. So here we go. We was just talking about drafting and how well we think our Bears did this year. Yeah. And as you know, if you're a Chicago Bear fan, that's one of the things that we tend to not do well, particularly the year that we traded 4 picks to move up one spot to draft Mitchell Trubisky, which is still, in my opinion, the absolute dumbest draft day trade and or decision ever in the history of the NFL draft. For Ryan Poles to give up that much capital to draft a guy, to move up one spot to draft a guy that was going to be there regardless, was just absolute asinine. And as history has told us, turns out to be he was stupid, and it turns out that it cost him his job. So let's fast forward to this past draft with what the Atlanta Falcons did that helped land us a doomsday. They gave Kirk Cousins $100 million guaranteed contract, 4 years, and they turned right around when they had needs in the wide receiver position. They had needs on defense, and they had guys that was there that could help them. They turned around and draft a guy at number 8 that's going to sit there for at least 4 years. And when you look at the decision makers in Atlanta, the same guy that drafted Trubisky,
Ryan Pace,
is in the room. Ryan Pace works for the Atlanta Falcons. And I give you one better. The guy that he replaced as general manager of Chicago, Phil Emery, is their top draft consultant. So when you look at that dumbass decision that they made, you can start to look at the people behind it. And 2 of the dumbest dudes who ever worked for Chicago is right there in Atlanta, helping continue the trend of doing dumb draft day decisions. I thought that was very interesting when I looked this up.
I agree with you. Yeah, Ryan Pace did make that big trade for Trubisky, which, if we would have just drafted him, it wouldn't have stung so bad because we still would have had our draft capital. We could add it to that team that won the NFC North. We could add it to that team. Then we couldn't add to the team because we didn't have any draft picks. It still makes me angry too. I mean, we could just stay pat and draft it. And not to mention, we didn't draft Deshaun Watson or Patrick Mahomes. We had Trubisky rated as the highest quarterback.
And it's not that we didn't draft Deshaun Watson, which is it angers you enough. It's the fact that we never even talked to him. Yeah. We never even interviewed him. You know, Ryan Pace tried to be the smartest man in the room. He gets on a red-eye flight, flies down to North Carolina so he can take Mitchell Trubisky out to dinner. Was just totally wowed by the answers that he gave. I'm told that they put a whiteboard up and called out concepts, and he just named them right off the bat. Was able to dissect defenses on the whiteboard. Couldn't do it on the field, but he can do it on the whiteboard. And then once he walked him out to his car and saw the raggedy piece of junk that he was driving around in, he was sold. Now, but he couldn't be sold on the guy that just played on the 2 previous national championship games against one of the historically best defensive of all time in college football, and he
Mm-hmm.
ripped him to shreds. We ain't gonna talk to that guy. Or we're not going to
Yeah.
talk to the guy down there in Texas who's breaking all sorts of records for Texas Tech. We don't want to talk to him, but we want to talk to a guy that had 12 starts and couldn't even beat out the guy that was befriending him. I can't remember the guy's name. I want to say the last name was Thomas, but he was the starter at Carolina.
Yeah.
Trubisky couldn't beat him out, and he never even sniffed the NFL. But you want to
Mhm.
draft Trubisky, and for the life of me, I wish we could have fired him twice.
You would have helped them pack, right? You would have drove to Chicago, helped them pack.
The absolute dumbest decision I have ever seen in my life, and I'll never forgive him for it.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, bear down.